my channel. Hope everyone is doing well. It is Sunday and it is humid. Not super hot, just really humid, muggy out there. So my family has gone to church. I am here just spending a couple of hours in peaceful solitude, which is what I usually do on Sundays, and I so much appreciate that that quiet time. So I thought I would come on and make a video for you guys and talk about the stuff that I have been reading lately. I've actually DNF'd more books than I have finished, which is unfortunate. So let's talk about the DNFs first. Okay, so I actually have DNF'd my whole project on Jane Austen and Jane Austen's relationship with her friend Anne Lefroy. I had these two books picked out for that. And let's see, I hadn't even got to this one yet, which I will. I will read some of these later. This is all letters of Anne Lefroy's, and I'll probably look through these at Epistolary January, because I'm always struggling to find epistolary books that are interesting to me for that particular challenge in January. So I may look through that then. But this one, I mean, I might go through it in points of it if I need information about something specific. But this book, I was warned. Somebody on Goodreads did say that this book contains every tiny, ridiculous, totally irrelevant, outdated detail you could possibly want to know about anybody who possibly breathed the same air as Jane Austen or one of her relatives. And it's just, no. I think what went on with this book, and I'm not putting the author down for this at all, but I think that this author really was kind of the same mindset as me. Oh, there's this sweet poem that Jane Austen wrote to her friend Anne. And there must be a really deep and abiding love there between the two, because this is such a sweet poem. And Jane was still thinking about her on her birthday several years later, right? Because Anne Lefroy died on Jane Austen's birthday. And so there must be something to this. And so the author just went off the rails as far as trying to find some kind of proof of a deep connection that is just not there. That's not to say that Anne and Jane did not have a good friendship. That's to say that neither one of them seemed to really, I don't know, they just didn't write about it. Like, so I don't want to say they didn't care enough about it to write about it, but they just didn't. Like, there's hardly anything. Like, there's really hardly anything. Like, Jane Austen's poem is probably lengthier than the amount of other writings that you could, use to establish like proof of relationship between them. So it was a futile effort, because my plan was to sort of research this and come up with a great timeline and a bunch of stuff and make a whole video on Jane and Anne Lefroy. And what I found was a couple of mentions of them, like in passing, as if I were to say something like, I saw these 5 people at the store today, and one of them was Anne Lefroy. Like, it was just like no reason really to go into that, right? That there was a little bit of a conspiracy theory regarding the question of whether or not Anne is the one that caused Tom Lefroy to pull his affections back from Jane and for them not to continue their relationship. But that relationship is a rumor as well. There's not really a lot of established proof for that. And as I read through this, I further established my belief that that relationship itself may not have even been a thing. So anyway, all that to say, I DNF'd the books and the project. And I will keep the books, obviously, like that just goes into my Jane collection, and I'll probably refer to them in the future for something, but not anytime soon. All right, and then the other book that I haven't necessarily DNF'd, I've just kind of put away for a while, and that is Countess Kate by Charlotte Mary Young. So I was looking for a book to read for a classic for my, Spring into Classics challenge. And so the only classic children's book that I actually had on my cart that I was choosing from was this. And I'm on page 120. That's, I don't know, it's almost to halfway through the book. And it's just really boring me because there's just not a lot going on. And it's really, there's a lot of moralizing in here as well, which, you know, is common. Charlotte Mary Young wrote this right smack in the middle of that whole Victorian moralization era. But it's just grating on my nerves. So I just want Kate to be able to just live her life and not have to worry about her opinion being, it's like when she has an opinion, she's morally reprimanded, right? And it's not even an immoral opinion, it's just different than the adults around her. She's trying to exert some of her own autonomy and just self-independence, not in no way is she trying to disrespect the adults around her. She's just trying to just be able to have a thought. And she is inconsistently being reprimanded. Sometimes they're just like, whatever. Sometimes there's a moral speech, and I don't know. I'm not loving it, but I will finish it at some point. And I'm really hoping that all of Charlotte Mary Young's books are not that morally annoying. I'm all for morals. They need to be biblical morals and not society morals, right? So anyway, I put it away for a while. It's one of those I'll probably pick up again this winter when I'm in a cozier and nicer mood. More tolerant mood, I guess. All right, so remember like a month or so ago when I hadn't yet reread The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim, and I was saying how I'll give it another try, but I really can't stand the characters of this book, and I just feel like it's such a slog until right at the end when everything turns on its head and it's wonderful. It doesn't really turn on its head, but it's just like, it just resolves in a happy way. And so I was like, I was kind of cautious about rereading it, but it was April. I needed the classic. I wanted to reread it. Several of my booktube friends were talking it up, and I was like, okay, I need to come I need to come to this with fresh eyes and see if I can enjoy it. And then I did, right? I enjoyed it. So I went on and was doing a little research on Elizabeth von Arnim and looking at some of the other things that she's written, and I came across a book called Vera. All right, this is Vera. And this was described as Wuthering Heights as if Jane Austen wrote it. And I was like, one, that's just hard. That's kind of a hard thing to imagine. And then it also sounded kind of like one of those things that someone says who hasn't actually read Jane Austen or Wuthering Heights. And it turns out this book is horrible. I hate this book, okay? And there are so many just sick triggers in this book, if you are a triggered sort of person. The book is all about emotional abuse in a marriage. There's no physical abuse. It's just like emotional gaslighting, manipulation, twisting, very narcissistic. Like, that's narcissistic is extremely mild for describing the man in this book. The book is probably what inspired Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. And people have talked about Rebecca being twisted. Rebecca is like a beautiful scented garden where everyone is gently swinging and singing lullabies. Rebecca is nothing. It's mild. It's basically if Daphne du Maurier was inspired by this book, Vera, she would have just she just took the whole thing and turned it back over to nice and happy. All right. So this is like a really twisted, sick version of what Rebecca could have been. It's Rebecca with all the characters mixed up, like the characters' personalities mixed up. Okay, so you get the Rebecca vibes all the way through it, definitely, but it's all different. Without giving away too much, like, it's hard for me to really go into it. But if you liked Rebecca for its, I guess, romantic storyline, don't bother reading this because there's zero romance here. But if you liked Rebecca for its twisted gothicness, you might enjoy the reading of this story. But the thing is, here's the reason why I hated this book. This book was all about a marriage where you just have a very horrible husband. Gross, narcissistic, manipulating, self-centered, is terrible. And as I was reading this, the whole time I'm thinking, I can't wait for this guy to get it. I can't wait for this guy to get what's coming to him. And I took what I knew about Elizabeth von Arnim into consideration as far as the Enchanted April and how she really has a way of writing really horrible characters. She really has a way of writing characters that, she just makes you really dislike them. But the Enchanted April, right, it all ended well. And so I just kept reading, waiting for this guy to get his comeuppance. And it did not end at all how I wanted to, how I thought it should. I'm so angry and disappointed at this book. It's terrible. And the weird thing is this book, through the generations, through the decades since it's been released, I think it was like the 20s or something. Yeah, 1921. Through the decades, it has been described as a morbid comedy, a tragic comedy. There's always the word comedy in there. There is nothing funny. Nothing. There is zero things funny about this book. And so I'm like, am I just missing the humor because the book's 100 years old? I don't think so. I just do not think this is funny. I think this book just came from a time when it was still okay for a man to dominate his wife in a unloving way. It was still, society still, didn't look down on that, I guess. I don't know. So it sounds like Elizabeth von Arnim actually wrote this book as kind of semi-autobiographical. She was married and a couple of times, was in a couple of relationships, and I can't exactly remember who it was that she was married to that she wrote this book based on, but I don't for a minute think that she promoted all of the crazy in this book. But there is no doubt in my mind that she went through it. You could not write about such a disgusting human unless you had actually experienced him, for sure. One of the things that makes this book different from Rebecca is there's not really any kind of plot resolution. In the story of Rebecca, you have a bit of a mystery, and as the book goes on, it's more and more mysterious. And it is more and more questioning things until it resolves and you get to the end and you realize the answer to the mystery and there's resolution. In this story, there's kind of a mystery. There's a mystery you can make up in your own mind, and there's questions that you can come up with in your own mind, but you don't have the same satisfactory resolution that you get in Rebecca. So anyway, I'm not recommending this book, but I am making you aware of it because I know a lot of you guys like The Enchanted April, and so you may want to read this. It's well told. It's her same, storytelling style that I usually really despise from that era, that whole modernist literature thing. I really don't like writings from that era of history, whether it's American or European or whatever. but it is very well written and very well told. And I spent every waking moment that I had available to read this book once I started it. I just don't think I'll ever read it again. And I may have said that about The Enchanted April, and I did end up rereading it and enjoying it much more this time. This is nothing like that. So yeah, I will probably never read that again. Okay. But a book that I really will read over and over again, I'm sure, throughout my life for studying and just the purposes of, wow, this book really affected me. That is Jesus Through Medieval Eyes by Grace Hamman. Now, this book I just recently found out about. I was watching, I can't remember. Is it called The Commonplace? I think her channel is called The Commonplace. And unfortunately, I can't remember her name. I always want to call her Erin because she reminds me of a girl that I know named Erin. But it's not Erin. I can't remember what her name is. And it's going to bug me. But anyway, I'll put a link down in the description box for that channel. But she was reading this. Now, her video was like a couple of years old, so I haven't watched her enough to hear what her review was on it. But I just saw it and I was like, wow, I am studying medieval times, right? I'm studying the Middle Ages during this year, and that sounds so interesting. And so I did grab this and started reading it immediately and finished it quickly and totally loved it. You can see I got a lot of tabs in there, information that I want to remember. And I know that I will reread this. Basically, in this book, the author looks at medieval art and specifically art depicting Jesus. And she picks out different characteristics that the artists and, the medieval people, the people from the Middle Ages as a whole would have thought about him. What is this art saying about him? And she picks out, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 different characteristics. And so each chapter is about that. So it's Jesus the warrior, it's Jesus the wounded, there's Jesus the mother, which when I read that, I was kind of weirded out. But after I read the chapter, I was like, okay, like I can see where you're coming from. There's Jesus the lover, which I despise that chapter and I did not, when I reread, I probably will not reread that chapter. I didn't see it. But some of them I really did see, and I thought that they were really good. Now, Jesus the judge, and Jesus the word, Jesus the knight. And so all these different characterizations of Jesus in medieval art. And then she just kind of breaks it down. And she uses what she knows about medieval people, their history, their customs, their culture, to explain how the medieval people, they loved Jesus just like we do, and Jesus loved them too. And to talk about how their faith was just strong or stronger than ours. And I don't know if I don't think that every Christian sees things this way, but I know that I struggle sometimes to think that we are in the enlightened 21st century, therefore we must have this enlightened view of Jesus, and we see Jesus like no one has ever seen him before. And that's such an arrogant attitude to have, right? And she kind of pointed that out a little bit in her book, about how the things that they saw, while we may not go there, right? Like if I were to say, oh, Jesus is my mother, if I were to say that now, you guys probably wouldn't watch me anymore, right? You'd be weirded out. Like, that girl has some trippy religion. I don't know what's up with her, but I don't want to be influenced, right? But as she went through scripture and the characteristics of a mother and showed how Jesus did, when he talked about, I wish I was a hen, I could gather you under my wing or something like that, right? Well, that's a mothering instinct, right? That's something that we tend to put on a mother over a father, right? And Jesus isn't our father. We know that too. So it's just really interesting perspective shift, right? And for me to think that just because I don't think that way, it means I'm more enlightened. No, it just means I have a different perspective. At one point, she says this: "We need works of the past to help us see beyond our own time-bound limitations." I was like, yeah, because I'm over here thinking I'm so much more enlightened, but actually I'm not. I'm bound by my limitations and the area in which I live. There's a lot of history that's gone by since Jesus ascended, right? And so none of us have spent a whole lot of time face to face with him since that happened. And so we all have a different way of seeing him based on how he's functioned in our lives, based on what part and how much of our lives we've given over to him, right? How vulnerable we've been with him, how long we've been walking with him, or, how committed we've been walking with him. It has to do with how we were raised to look at Jesus and the different influences that we've had in our lives, whether it was our parents or our church or our friend or whatever, school and things that we've read and watched. All kinds of different things in our own culture have shifted our perspective of Jesus. I've been following him since I was, a teenager. And so I'm now 46. Even in my own life, my perspective on Jesus has shifted as he has walked with me through different eras of my life and ministered to me in different ways. So she just talks all about that and how it's she doesn't say, but I'm saying it's very arrogant for us to put our 21st century mentalities on a Jesus who ministered to people of the past, because there's ways in which we see him now that the people of the Middle Ages would never have imagined seeing him. They would be like, wow, that's so weird and gross. I don't want to be influenced by that. Where on the flip side, we can think the same thing about some of the ways in which they viewed Jesus. So she shows some of the artwork that she's talking about in the book. She shows one picture where there is a man baby apparently being birthed out of Jesus's side. And it looks like they're taking it out of his side, right? This baby, but he's actually grown. And the idea is this is how they're depicting that the church, that Jesus birthed, that he started the era of the church, right? Of the Christian church and Christianity. And if you look at that, you're not weirded out by the concept. Yes, of course. It was Jesus's death and resurrection and, appearing to all of us as Messiah and proving that he was the Messiah that started, the era of evangelism, the era of, the established church and the way that, people have done, Christianity through the ages. Yes, of course, that was birthed at the time of Jesus's, revelation to us that he was Messiah. But would we paint a picture of a man baby being born out of his side, and another person, Christian person, being, standing there ready to receive it and deliver the baby out of Jesus's side? Would we paint something like that? Probably not. And if we did, like if I just showed you, hey, look at my Jesus painting, you'd be like, what? Like it would weird us out, right? So it's kind of like that. Like she's showing how the things the ways that they depicted him are different, but the concepts are the same. So I love that. I just got so much out of this book. It really drove home the perspective that I have been trying to kind of foster in my own thinking lately, about trying to see other people's point of view. Studying history for empathy. And that has actually been a topic I've heard a lot of booktubers talking about lately, about how studying history, reading classics, building empathy in us, because the classics are richer works by and large compared to a lot of what we're getting in contemporary literature. And, I don't want to get into that debate, but just across the board, it appears to me in my own experience, says that the classics, just with the richer language and the deeper themes, I think help build empathy globally, global empathy. And then the history obviously helps us to see that on one hand, we're all kind of how we always have been, right? People don't really change all that much. But also, when we understand historical context, it helps us to better grasp the message. She took that whole idea of trying to sort of see other people's perspectives. She took it to a whole other level that had to do with making our own selves vulnerable. When we isolate ourselves academically, we isolate ourselves in other ways as well. When we refuse to look at other histories, other cultures, other perspectives, and try to understand and even try to learn, when we refuse to do that, it puts us on this path where we're slowly kind of just coming in and staying very tightly rolled up in a ball rather than choosing to bloom, right? Another quote from the book: "We have not met Christ face to face, and the time and place in which we live limit our conception of him." Yeah, like we are limited. We are more limited. We are not more enlightened, especially if we refuse to try to study Christians of the past, right, and the experiences that they went through. In one part, she says, "Am I a mind blinded? Have I built a careful intellectual defense system that hardens my heart against people I disagree with or do not like, who are actually Jesus in disguise?" And I thought that was so, it just made me, that really made me think. I wrote about that a lot in my journal. I wrote, wow, yes, I can be so guilty of that. I think it comes from a fear of being led astray, but it also inhibits growth. When done prayerfully, I think I can recognize traps along the way. So the point was basically, if we say, these are my perspectives, this is how I see the Bible, this is how I see Jesus, this is how I interpret it, and here it is. And I'm never, ever, 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 ever going to open these hands and maybe see if I can receive more understanding, more revelation, a better grasp of who Jesus is and what the Bible says. That is a limited way to live, but even people who, even someone who would think that they're very academic and intellectual can be guilty of living that way. So when I was thinking about that, I was like, yeah, I think that at times in my life when I have been unwilling to learn and grow in him and in understanding, it's because I've been afraid of being led the wrong way. It's like I just don't want to be led in a way that is going to keep me from walking in truth, right? And that's important. Like, we do need to be very careful about that. But we also need to prayerfully and with faith take risks sometimes, read something that might be outside of our, intellectual comfort zone, not necessarily outside of our religion. Like, I don't feel like there's any reason to pursue understanding of other religions personally. I feel like if we just pursue understanding of the true biblical, ways that God is trying to lead us, then false things will be made very obviously clear to us, right? If you understand truth, you can recognize falsehoods. So I'm not really talking about researching other religions, but other insights that people have about Christianity. I've been very closed off to that. I've been no, I don't want to hear from another man or woman, person, what they think about God. I don't read a lot of Christian nonfiction. I don't read Christian nonfiction hardly at all. That's why it was surprising to me that I really just ate this book up, because it was all about perspective, and it was all about challenging my perspective. And I've just been very closed off to that. And I can't say that I'm going to run right out to Barnes & Noble's religion section and pick up all kinds of writings by other, Christians, brothers and sisters, and read all their nonfiction thoughts. And it's just too much. Like, I just want to read what God told me in the Bible and let him help me interpret it in the way he wants me to understand it. That's how I tend to approach any kind of Christian teaching. I don't really sit under a teacher or listen to a teacher. I just read the Bible and pray for understanding, right, of what God wants me to know about it. But I do think that I'm open to things like this book, where she's helping me to understand history, and in understanding history, it is helping me to understand God, to understand Jesus, to understand how he's revealed himself to different people throughout history, and that their experience was just as meaningful as mine, and maybe even more so, and just as important and just as valid. While this book is filled with many, 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 many more wonderful things, that is really the basics of what I took away from this book. And I'm really glad. I'm really thankful that I did read it. I think it was an important book. Kind of a niche thing, right? And something that was, if you're not into art, medieval art, especially if you're not into, I don't know if iconography is the right word. If that's not the right word, I'll put the right word in here for you. But that stuff, symbolism, whatever, you'll probably really enjoy this. And yeah, I really, really did. All right, so that's the stuff I've been reading lately. And now I've been reading a lot of my Agatha Christie biography as well. I am probably 2/3 of the way through it or so. But that's what I've been reading these last several days since finishing Vera. Just like, I'm afraid to pick up anything else. But there are a couple of my medieval nonfictions that I want to get through this month, kind of get caught up on. I think that I want to read more from my preschool studies over these next few days before the end of the month. And I don't know, I'm not really sure what else. I feel like I have no plan, but not this week. So this is Sunday, not tomorrow, but the next Monday, my kids are going to camp for a whole week. And I don't know, I feel like I want to do something really important and something just really deep and focused that I don't have the time or focus to do when I'm mothering, right? And I don't know what that is. And I really don't want to waste that week. So I don't know. Maybe I'll come up with a little like week project for myself and let you guys know. But anyway, I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to go play my Agatha Christie puzzle and just think about stuff for a little bit until my family gets home, and just enjoy these little minutes of quiet. I love them when they're here, but sometimes it's nice just to have your own quiet peace, right? And so I've got maybe, I don't know, I got, what is it, 9:30? Yeah, I got a couple hours still. So see if I can finish my puzzle and maybe listen to some booktube and just relax. All right, guys, I hope everybody's doing well. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.